All right. Welcome, everybody. Hello. My name is Tyson Barker, and I want to welcome you guys to the Growing the Digital Economy in Central and Eastern Europe session. I am delighted to have such a group, an extremely impressive group of panelists to discuss this today. Because I live in Germany, I work at the German Council on Foreign Relations. We talk a lot about digitization in Germany. We talk a lot about it in Brussels, but I think we are missing a lot of the perspective from this region, and we have some excellent speakers today to tackle this. I think everybody is aware that for the European Commission right now, digitization is a very high priority, one of the top 2 priorities, in fact. And President Ursula von der Leyen declared this the digital decade. The Commission itself has released something called the Digital Compass, which had 4 points, as compasses do, and basically outlined, what Europe would like to see happen in the next 10 years. And those points are increasing a digitally skilled population and a highly skilled digital professional workforce. Secure and substantial digital infrastructure is the second. The third is digital transformation of business. And the fourth is digitization of public sector. And of course, you have to put your money where your mouth is. And in this case, with the European Recovery Package, Europe is planning to do just that, donating or dedicating 20% of the $750 billion European Recovery Package to this goal. So what we're going to do in this session is really discuss what this means and how Central Europe plans to play a role in this digital decade. And we have 5 excellent panelists with us today. The first is Veronika Remišová, who is the Deputy Prime Minister of Slovakia for Investment in Informationalization. She is a member of the Slovakian Parliament and has worked for the European Commission prior to that for 10 years. So welcome, Ms. Deputy Prime Minister.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Hello.
Second, joining us remotely is Andres Sutt, who is the Minister for Entrepreneurship and Information Technology of the Republic of Estonia, which is a role he has held since January 2021. And he has been a member of Parliament since 2019. Prior to that, he had a long career in banking. He was 17 years at the Bank of Estonia, including the Deputy Governor of the bank, responsible for financial stability. And he also worked for the European Stability Mechanism. So welcome, Mr. Minister Sutt.
My pleasure to be here.
Third, we have Boštjan Koritnik, who is the Minister of Public Administration for the Republic of Slovenia. He is a former journalist, an editor, a lawyer, a former teacher, and perhaps most interestingly for this panel, a founder. And of course, he will give us some insight into the Slovenian EU presidency, which is upcoming. Welcome, Mr. Minister. Thank you for being here. Fourth, we have Michael Froman, who is the Vice Chairman and President of Strategic Growth Executive Initiatives for Mastercard. And I think well known to many people in this room, serving in the Obama administration from 2013 to 2017 as the US trade representative, being President Obama's principal advisor on trade and investment issues. And prior to that, worked in the White House as Deputy National Security Advisor for International Economic Affairs. Welcome, Ambassador Froman.
Thanks very much.
And finally, we have Jeff Bullwinkel, who is the Associate General Counsel and Director of Corporate, External, and Legal Affairs at Microsoft. And I think he is something of a Microsoft lifer. He's been there for 18 years, serving in the Asia Pacific before coming to Europe. And I think knows you're pretty inside and out, like me, an American working here, explaining the US and the US digital landscape to Europeans and the European digital landscape to Americans. Welcome, Jeff. Thank you for coming. All right, so I want to jump right into this with a question for the Deputy Prime Minister. One of the things I mentioned was this idea of this European Recovery Package. How is the region, how is Central and Eastern Europe playing into this? What would you, as Deputy Prime Minister and Central Europe, like to see come out of this European Recovery Package for digitization?
Thank you very much. As we emerge from COVID-19 global downturn, we see that rapid recovery boosts are needed to stabilize our economic growth and employment, and this can be carried out by a large-scale investment. In Slovakia, the circumstances have been very difficult during the crisis, and during the crisis we saw that digital technologies are very essential in responding to the worldwide crisis. We can speak about education, flexible homework, and so on. Now we are facing the unique opportunity, thanks to the support of the European Recovery and Resilience Facility, to come out from the biggest challenge of the 21st century much stronger and, in fact, more competitive. The European Union has encouraged member states to reflect the importance of technology solutions, of digitalization trends in their national menus. And in Slovakia, we prepare a strong digital package component of the recovery plan, which will bring positive impact on our society, lifestyle, work opportunities, as well as environment. We placed the digital components really in the core of our recovery plan, and our digital component is focusing on 4 areas. The first one is digital infrastructure, so to improve digital infrastructure and connectivity, digital public services, cybersecurity, of course, and digital transformation of small and medium-sized businesses while deploying top digital solutions across the country. The key elements of our reform are digital economy, innovation, bringing notable added value to digital competitiveness of Slovakia, and most important investments will target 2 domains. We specifically will invest into increasing our participation in multi-country projects, so we want to cooperate with other European and regional partners of the European Union, and to create subsidy schemes to support projects that develops and implement top digital technologies. I'm convinced that Slovakia will be a reliable partner in terms of building a stronger Europe. As far as the pandemic is concerned, COVID-19 pushed digitization everywhere, and on the national level, what we need now is the right government action to accelerate productivity, digitize across all sectors of the economy, and encourage innovation. The central investment in this area is the subsidy schemes we are creating to support research, development, application of top digital technologies with the use of public and business sector and scientific research institutions. The technologies that we will support will include mainly high-performance computing, quantum technologies, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, and many other advanced technology. And this scheme also will be the tool to co-finance projects successful in the European Union, directly managed programs such as Horizon, Digital Europe, or Connecting Europe Facility, and to bring in national investment. So these are the main plans for a digital component in Slovakia, and I hope that we can achieve real progress in digital transformation of Slovakia in, I would say, few years.
Thank you so much, Madam Deputy Prime Minister. Minister Sutt, the Deputy Prime Minister mentioned a lot of different initiatives, and coming from Germany, watching some of the other countries in the EU, you hear about a lot of these kind of initiatives. But how are smaller countries, including yours in Estonia, making sure that they are embedded in an integrated process, that they are dealing with multi-country projects, and that this moment of, let's say, tech industrial policy doesn't end up being nationally based?
This is a very right angle. I think if we collectively in Europe want to succeed, then we really need to work that we have a shared one single market, including in digital domain, And if anything, what COVID has demonstrated, we certainly are facing the most digital year and a half in terms of, I mean, throughout the society. And I think there are a couple of areas where we really need to work upon. One relates to digital skill set, because in Estonia we have already 99% of the public services available online. So it's really a matter of access to these services, making all people educated. And even though we have that high penetration rate, we still have a digital skills gap we need to close. So there are still 10-15% of people who for a reason or another are not the best friends with the digital world. So this is where we see a lot of work ahead. Also, if we look at the corporate side, then the digitalization is part of or integral part of a three main global trends. If we talk about digitalization, green transition, and also the innovation drive. And what we push here very strongly is really to improve a collaboration between the universities and businesses, so there will be more research and development, more applied research, so that we can actually move up the value chain. And again, here I think the size of the individual country, it does matter, but I come back to what I said in the beginning. We really need to make sure that Europe as a whole is functioning without the borders. And relatedly, I think also Deputy Prime Minister mentioned cybersecurity. If we look on the amount of funding what we get into the digital domain in Europe through different European funds, which is about 130 billion, and this and then we top it up with a private investment, it's obvious we need heavily investment in cybersecurity. Otherwise, we develop new services, new products, becoming increasingly more digital. But if we don't top up the investment in cybersecurity, we will also become increasingly vulnerable. And we see a fairly rapid rise of different type of cyber attacks, which are becoming increasingly sophisticated, targeting both public and private companies. So these are, I think, important domains where we need to continue to work.
Before I move on to Minister Koritnik, Minister Sutt, you mentioned the issue of cross-border markets and making sure that the digital single market is complete. What grade would you give the digital single market in its completion right now? Do you see it as complete?
We are still. I mean, I think we are still fragmented. I mean, that's obvious. I wouldn't put a specific percentage in it, but I mean, if you look on the digital services, what could be applied across the union, I mean, we are not that far yet. And also, I think it's very uneven across the member states. What is the number of digital services available, either in the public domain or in the private domain? But I think what is really important is the interoperability of the different public services. So if I'm a citizen of Estonia, we have the secure EID, so I would have an access to public services which are digital in Germany or in Belgium or in Slovak Republic. I think there is a huge upside in this process if we can advance, because if we only develop our own states, then globally we all will be small. If we want to be in a leader's position, we need to talk about 500 million people or almost 500 million people living in Europe, being the most digital, most innovative, and also open for talent, open for business. I think these are important domains regardless of the size of individual country. And if we look, I mean, we have 7 unicorns in Estonia. None of them would actually become to existence if they would have targeted only the market of Estonia. So this global ambition and again appetite to take risk, I think these are important factors.
7 unicorns in Estonia is definitely an enviable number for a country the size of Estonia. I think all European, even Germany, I think, or France would wish they had 7 unicorns, frankly. Minister Koritnik, Slovenia is about to take over the leadership of this 500 million person bloc, lots of consumers. What are the European Council presidency priorities for Slovenia in the digital and tech space?
Thank you very much for the question and the opportunity to be here among renowned experts and colleagues. Our presidency strongly supports digitalization and digital transformation of the society, and of course the development of advanced technologies. The intensive process of digital transformation for companies to be fit for the fourth industrial revolution should support the implementation of advanced technologies, artificial intelligence, big data, Internet of Things, and of course blockchain. Digitalization for me is mere technology and techniques, but digital transformation is changing the culture and impedes the digitalization. If we want to succeed, we should firstly build trust in digitization with a safe environment for citizens and businesses. Ensure the availability of digital infrastructure and services. Also, the construction of high-speed broadband and 5G networks needs to be accelerated. Thirdly, ensure accessibility of infrastructure and services. Enhance digital competences. The education system needs to be adapted to include the comprehensive development of digital competences. Digital skills should also be made available to people in the third age, people with disabilities, and those who are not digitally skilled. We should leave, like said on several occasions, no one behind. In the EU level, we have several financial supporting mechanisms for implementing new technologies. Recovery and Resilience Plan is the most recent one, and it offers several options to finance the technologies like 5G, blockchain, AI. For instance, Slovenia is included in 3 cross-border multi-country projects. One is EuroCloud, so European Common Data Infrastructure and Services, European Blockchain Service Infrastructure, and the third is Project on Common European Interest, Semiconductors and Microchips. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Minister. Ambassador Froman, the minister mentioned some cross-border projects that Slovenia is currently engaged in 3 areas that I think are of great interest to Europe right now for its geostrategic competitiveness and its positioning for the future: cloud, blockchain, and semiconductors. And we just had this week President Biden make his first trip to Europe, had the first US-EU summit since 2014, since I believe you were in office at USTR. What is your assessment of how the United States can play a role in the digitization of Central and Eastern Europe and also of Europe in its totality? And how do you assess the launch of this new Trade and Tech Council?
Well, I think it's a very positive move to bring us together across the Atlantic, like-minded countries, to look at the issues around data and technology. And we won't agree on everything, but I think we're actually going to end up being much closer to each other's perspectives than we are to alternative perspectives that are out there. And so you saw at the G7, they announced a Future Tech Forum, and as you mentioned, the US-EU, Technology Council. Those are good mechanisms to really address these issues like privacy, data flows, sovereignty, and making sure that we're working together. I'd say as well, it's not just an issue for governments, it's an issue for the private sector. And there's a lot of work we can do. We're working with about 100 governments around the world, including through digital country partnerships, to introduce technology, help them with their data strategies, figure out how to benefit, make sure that the digital transformation that's happening benefits the society, particularly, I would say, small businesses who, in the context of COVID, we all learned just how critical it is to be part of the digital economy, whether you're an individual getting a disbursement from your government or a small business needing to stay in touch with your customers and suppliers. And so we've been working with governments from France, the Czech Republic, elsewhere in Europe to see how to prepare SMEs for the digital economy and make sure they've got the tools, the training, the access necessary to take advantage of the opportunities that provides. So I think it's a public issue, it's a private sector issue, and really where public-private partnerships can come together to help this transformation succeed. As the previous speakers mentioned, it's going to be to the benefit of the European public and European business sector.
I mean, that's definitely something that we saw in this COVID time, the great accelerator. I mean, there was a lot of adoption of digital solutions by companies large and small. Jeff, one of the goals of the Digital Compass is to have 75% of European companies using cloud and edge technology by 2030. And of course, most of those companies are SMEs. We saw a major adoption acceleration boom in the COVID period, but there was also a lot of ambivalence because there was this idea that a lot of that adoption was to the benefit of non-European companies. How can a company like Microsoft make Europe governments and publics feel comfortable with the relationship, the interdependence of US and European companies on each other?
Well, picking up on Michael Froman's comment and your question, Tyson, I would say there has been a massive acceleration of technology adoption. Satya Nadella, our CEO, likes to say that there was 2 years of innovation effectively in 2 months, and that may well be an understatement. And that, I think, for us at Microsoft reinforced a couple of things that are important. One really is the importance of digital skills, as the Deputy Prime Minister mentioned to the other ministers. And so we did focus on that and how we could contribute in that area. About a year plus ago, as the pandemic really began to take hold, we committed to train 25 million people around the world within a year in digital skills in a variety of different ways, focusing on free training materials, but also reduced discounted certifications with Microsoft technologies. And I'm pleased that after about a year plus, we hit 42 million people actually across the world, 2.3 million or so here in the region. So that's one area where a lot has been done, a lot more has to be done if there's going to be opportunity. And to your point in relation to how technology can be used to facilitate growth at the European level, we very much focused on what's top of mind as people embrace more cloud services. That has been privacy, it has been security, it has been data sovereignty defined to mean different things by different people. And that does get to this question of the position of American technology companies relative to European technology companies. We have very much focused on what President Ursula von der Leyen has said when she talks about the need for Europe fit for the digital age. And for us, that means technology fit for Europe. So how do we facilitate growth and innovation within the local European technology economy? One of the ways we've tried to do that is to respect European values and expectations around sovereignty. And one of those expectations increasingly is that data remains within the European Union. And so just about a month ago, in fact, we announced what we call essentially an EU data boundary for the Microsoft cloud, which is a commitment by Microsoft that all data is going to be stored and processed within the European Union. And as a technology company, we are most of all a platform provider, allowing companies here in Europe who want to have their data also within the European Union to build upon our platform. And we're excited about that development. But equally, we do live in a global economy after all, and the internet is global in nature. So we need to find ways to make sure that data can flow across borders within Europe, but also outside of Europe too. And as Ambassador Froman, we are very encouraged to see what has been happening in the context of this most recent visit between the Biden administration and folks here within the European Union.
That was an excellent way to start to open it up for questions. Great opening statements from our speakers. If you do have any questions, please use the Slido app, or we have an audience here in the room. We will also take questions in the good old-fashioned way of you asking the question in person. But I'm going to kick it off with a little bit of discussion with the group because everybody's kind of put a lot of things on the table. And one of the things that was raised by Jeff Bullwinkel was this issue of digital sovereignty. And I'm very interested to know how Central Europe sees this concept of digital sovereignty and where they see their position when it's formulated in Brussels, for example. So, Minister Sutt, how does Estonia interpret the term digital sovereignty? Is it a positive? Is it a negative? Where is Estonia placed in that?
This is something what we certainly need. so we are all part of a process in defining what we mean by digital sovereignty. That is obviously important, and for us, of course, it means that we focus really on the level playing field. We will remain and be open as a trading bloc, and I think it's also important if we talk about the possibilities for our own companies, particularly SMEs, that they have reasonable access to different services and platforms, so that they can equally compete in the global market. But for me, digital sovereignty is not really building the walls. I mean, it is about agreeing globally what are the rules of the game, and then sticking to the rules, and of course protecting those who play by the rules, and keeping away those who actually want to play by a different rule book. So, but it is again something what we work jointly in Europe, regardless of which corner of the union we come from.
So digital sovereignty is playing by the rules. Of course, Europe is in the process of drafting a pretty comprehensive rule book right now. Jeff, how does Microsoft see this idea of digital sovereignty as playing by the rules and keeping a level playing field?
Well, first of all, we are, I guess, a technology company that perhaps before some others recognize just how important it is for there to be more regulation in the area of cloud services. That's true in relation to AI, for instance, and we were early in calling for regulation in that space because, after all, there does need to be some form of if you will, regulatory floor to avoid a race to the bottom. And so we're watching, obviously, very closely what's happening in Brussels as well around the DMA and DSA and DORA and so on. But here, too, we're seeing, I think, a trend toward regulation that's going to be balanced and really appropriate in the context of what I think are shared values across the Atlantic. And I do think it's helpful in a forum like this, building upon some of the statements we heard earlier yesterday and even over dinner last night, to think about what can be done in the context of transatlantic relations in terms of a digital alliance. Because as was said by one of the previous speakers, there's more in common than not in this respect. And are there things, in fact, we can do together to reach more regulatory cohesion in the context of democratic values, Western values, European values? And we certainly focus on that at Microsoft as well.
So if Microsoft sees its role in just adhering to the rules and also help shape this process, is that something that, where does Central Europe play in that? Because a lot of these rules are taking place in Brussels. Minister Koritnik, how are you planning on integrating more companies into setting an agenda for the Slovenian presidency? And how are you planning on making this rule book setting part of the priority that will take place in the next 6 months?
Thank you. When it comes to the European single market, it is crucial to use the development opportunities of ICT and the internet to accelerate the development of the digital society and to make life easier for people and businesses. Therefore, digital transformation, digital technologies and cybersecurity will be the priorities of the EU presidency when it comes to fostering a European single market. This includes improving connectivity, developing secure and efficient digital infrastructure, including 5G, safe and open web and cyberspace, resilience to cyber and hybrid threats, improving digital skills, I already mentioned, accessible digital public services, and creating a favorable environment for the development, testing, and use of new technologies. We will focus on several legislative acts and strive to reach as much progress as possible in the Council regarding Artificial Intelligence Act, Data Governance Act, Digital Services and Markets Package, that was already mentioned by my colleagues. Roaming regulation is also important because it's something that it's the most tangible thing for European citizens. And of course, the directive on measures for a high common level of cybersecurity across the Union, the so-called NIS2 directive. For example, regarding AI, it is crucial to create a high level of trust in AI. And in order to do this, AI should be developed and used in a way that is responsible, focused on common interests and on people. AI is a means, not an end. And we all know that it offers immense potential in health, transport, energy, agriculture, tourism, or cybersecurity. But what it's important, the new rules should be applied directly in the same way across all member states. And this is how we create unified and trustworthy environment. Not to forget, we should also focus on digital skills to fill the competence gap. Regarding data, which is closely connected to AI, we should by all means better exploit the potential of data. And data should be used as a key resource for startups, small and medium-sized enterprises, and for the development of their products and services. We should focus on the flow of data within the EU and across sectors in line with clear, fair rules for their access, storage, and reuse. Of course, regarding the digital services and markets package, our aim, what we should do is to prevent the exposure of citizens to increasing risks and harmful consequences online, and the control over large platforms should be more efficient to prevent abuse of their systems. So we should enhance cooperation among public authorities to ensure effective enforcement across the single market. What we shouldn't forget is related to all the files in cybersecurity, and we will pay special attention to strengthening the cyber resilience of critical infrastructure and the digital single market in the event of a possible large-scale cyber attack.
So you bring up this issue of a lot of different new threats, emerging threats, cyber threats that the European Union is going to have to confront. We're seeing a lot of new types of attacks, very prominent in the United States, for example, around ransomware, the pipeline attack on Colonial, meat processing, etc. I have a question for Ambassador Froman in this area. It's kind of a lateral question on cryptocurrencies, which is, do you consider cryptocurrencies a threat to national controlled or regulated economies, and let's take it even a step further, to national security?
Well, cryptocurrencies cover a lot of different ideas. There are stable coins, there are central bank digital currencies being explored. I think to take a step back, I think the blockchain offers enormous opportunity for innovation across payments and across a lot of other areas as well. And our perspective is that there may be a role for digital currencies if they provide, first of all, if they're completely consistent with the regulatory framework, if they provide consumer value, and if there's a level playing field, so a variety of players can play in it in the competitive fashion. We're working with central banks all over the world. We created a sandbox for them to experiment with regulations with regard to digital currencies. And I think it's too early to tell exactly how this is going to evolve, but there is certainly going to be a lot of innovation in this area. Can I just say something on the previous comments, though, if you don't mind? I think it points out a really interesting set of questions to explore. Clearly, the EU has been at the lead when it comes to privacy regulation, and GDPR is being now applied elsewhere around the world by companies and adopted by other governments in some form or another. And there's absolutely legitimate privacy concerns. But finding the right balance between protecting individual privacy and private information, personal information, and the benefits of cross-border data flows. And I'll just give you two examples. I think it's pretty clear to people that we would not have had as much progress as we've had in developing vaccines for COVID if you couldn't share data across borders. And similarly, all the discussion we've just had about cybersecurity, because we see transactions all over the world and we see it, we're a trust network, we can identify cyber attacks, patterns that emerge in Ukraine, Philippines, Nigeria, and we've saved tens of billions of dollars for countries by making sure that we've identified with AI these cybersecurity threats and fixed them. If you have national clouds, balkanized internet, you run the risk of not being able to make those kinds of judgments. And so we just have to make sure we're finding ways of addressing privacy, other legitimate regulatory needs, but not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, and losing the benefits of an open digital economy, including around innovation and around cybersecurity.
Deputy Prime Minister Remišová, Ambassador Froman brings up a key point in the tension between the US and Europe, which is the question around data privacy and how it should be dealt with and respected. How does Slovakia see this privacy debate? How does Slovakia see the implementation of GDPR? Is this something that stifles innovation, or is this just something that enhances Slovakian and European competitiveness?
It's true that European Union is the champion of regulation. That's true. And I think that we should boost also innovation, because the most innovative firms and enterprises are either today in the United States or China. So I think that it is really very important to find a proper balance between regulation and innovation boost. As far as GDPR is concerned in Slovakia, we saw that, I don't want to say problems with GDPR, but it was with some of the digital COVID solutions. GDPR was real problem, because we wanted to find, for example, tracking of COVID positive patients without breaking GDPR, European GDPR rules. But at the same time, I think, yes, that the balance between consumer privacy and rights of consumer is very important. And just let me mention, sure. You spoke about critical independence in or independence of critical infrastructure in the European Union. I want just to mention one initiative. You saw a wonderful presentation, I think, of Mr. Danilák about the Tachyon microchips. So in Slovakia, our ambition is to build a new supercomputer, and that will be one of the Europe's fastest computer system, and we have a close partnership between business, academia, and we want to encourage building system with theoretical computing power up to 520 petaflops that could offer this capacity to research institutions, small and medium-sized enterprises, just to boost independence of critical infrastructure in Slovakia. So this is very important for Slovakia, and to build ecosystem, innovative ecosystem around this supercomputer.
Minister Koritnik, we have a question from the audience that it touches on some of this, let's say, the transatlantic atmospherics that we have been talking about. And is it possible for tech companies to grow in Central and Eastern Europe without getting acquired by large, mostly US companies? Is there room to grow? And maybe we can add Chinese companies, because clearly there is a higher presence now with Ali Cloud, Alipay, TikTok, all coming into the European market space. What is the room for European companies to grow without being acquired by external actors?
Well, thank you for the question, which is...
sorry.
So,
please.
You mentioned I'm about to answer it? Okay. Well, indeed, it's not the field I cover within the ministry, but regarding my previous experience, I would always say it's a choice for the owner, for the founder to decide to be acquired or not. It's his free will and his, let's say, estimation of how his company, his child, his startup could grow better, keeping it for himself, or selling or allowing a foreign investor to come in, regardless of what flag the investor carries. So that's my, let's say, previous experience answer. But of course, I would always, as a politician in an EU member state, say that of course they can grow, but we will try to make the environment better so they can grow better. That's a political answer.
That is obviously a very laissez-faire answer, very open answer, open market answer. But we're in a moment right now where there's a lot more scrutiny of investment, right? We're in a moment where there's a lot more consideration around mergers and acquisitions and what that could mean for the strength of indigenous economies. Minister Remišová, I know you had a response to this. Is this something that Europe needs to take more seriously? External actors looking to acquire, let's say, the crown jewels of European innovation?
Of course, the ambition of European Union and the member states should be to keep the intellectual property here in Slovakia. That's when I said that we want to, as a state, Slovakia, we want to build a partnership with the academia, with the business, for not only for supercomputing, but also for other initiatives like blockchain initiative or digital innovation hubs, which are exactly the partnership between tech firms and between state. And the second thing, which was already mentioned, is regulation. I think that we should make a regulatory framework innovation friendly. And this is the role for the European Union, but only for individual member states, to make a regulatory framework innovation friendly.
Ambassador Froman, when you look at this regulation that is coming down the pipeline, I can say we did an event at the German Council on Foreign Relations last week with the chair of the National Security Commission on Artificial Intelligence, Eric Schmidt. And he was asked what he thought about the AI regulation, and he called it a disaster. What do you think when you look at this new raft of regulation coming down the pike, and what do you think will be its impact on innovation? Do you think it is innovation friendly as the Deputy Prime Minister would like it to be?
Well, it's a great question, and I haven't delved into the details of all the regulations, but I think the Deputy Prime Minister really put it right, which is the EU excels at issuing regulations. And I think what's really important is that there be enough transparency and input from a wide range of stakeholders, whether it's civil society, private sector, other governments, as they form these regulations, just so they get the benefit of all the input to understand more fully what impact it could have on innovation. As the Deputy Prime Minister laid out, much of the innovation in this sector is happening outside of the European Union. You have to ask yourself why. And this is an opportunity to ensure that even as very legitimate issues get addressed through regulation, it's not further delaying or further impeding an innovative ecosystem in Europe, because Europe has a tremendous amount that it can contribute to this area, but it does need the enabling environment to do so.
Minister Sutt, one of the things that people always mention when they talk about innovation in Europe is Europe has a lot of amazing innovation, but it's not being commercialized. That the commercialization is happening outside of Europe. Great things are happening from the MP3 player to the computer, but the companies that are turning this into profitable enterprises are elsewhere. How can Europe bridge that gap? How can it bridge that commercialization gap?
Yes, well, now I'm in a bit of difficulty in which way I'm siding, because if I look on Estonian example, and we are part of all the EU regulation, and we were being able to grow here 7 unicorns. There is a lot of innovation what is happening. I think maybe we are sometimes too humble in talking about where we have excelled and where we have been very competitive. And in that sense, I think we where we can and should do more is precisely to creating one single market. And I very much agree with the points on the data flows cross-border, because that is really what we need for innovation. But otherwise, I think I don't see it in that dark colors. I would rather put it differently. I mean, it's we have lots of opportunities if we can make a single market in digital domain truly working. And there is, I mean, we all know that there is also significant repositioning globally in terms of strategic industries, strategic value chains and supply chains. And we need to be attractive as an investment destination. Yes, there are many regulations, but regulations are increasing also, I think, in other places. And that's not really kind of common European or only European topic. And also when I mentioned there was a topic about or a question about investment screening. I mean, in my previous positions, I had to deal a lot with financial industry. And in financial industry, there has always been a screening about the management, about the owners of the banks or other financial institutions so that they are fit and proper. I think what has happened with the digitalization, that there have been a number of other critical infrastructures and critical industries which need comparable screening. It's not that we prevent innovation to develop or prevent companies away, but it's more to make sure that this system is reliable, it is transparent, and it is safe. And I wouldn't really be concerned if somebody wants to invest in companies who have been invented in Europe. I think that actually is a positive dimension. So I think we should be more upbeat. Glass is never half empty for Europe. It's always half full, at least.
Glass is always half full. I'm going to ask one final question to everybody on the panel, one sentence. We're half full. We've got a glass half full. We want to get it all full, completely full. We're looking at the digital compass. This has a lot of objectives looking towards 2030. If you could name one thing where you would like Europe to exceed its objectives, where Europe should be a leader, where Europe is creating a framework for innovation, where Europe is inspiring other countries, the United States, China, etc., in the field of technology, what would you like to be kind of the headline in the digital compass in 2030 looking back? So in 2030, in one sentence, looking back, Europe is the hub for fintech, or Europe is the hub for IT professionals. What would that one thing be? One sentence. Deputy Prime Minister, you're first.
Hub for, well, I'm always coming up from national context, so I would say supercomputing. Yes, and at the same time, I think we set path or standards for ethic, for example, for artificial intelligence, which is very important. It's not the same as a regulatory framework, but setting up ethical standard for all the digital innovation in the world. So I think these two parts are very important.
Perfect. Ambassador Sutt, or Minister Sutt, excuse me.
Yes, I think it is about data. It's about protecting the values when processing and using data for innovation, because this is where the value is going to be created. I think that would be the most single important factor determining how competitive we are.
Minister Koritnik, what is your sentence?
Well, determining, harnessing the many opportunities, addressing challenges in a future-proof, sustainable manner.
Perfect. Ambassador Froman, looking across the ocean, what do you want to see in 10 years?
I'd love to see Europe as the hub of innovation at the nexus of digital transformation and the green economy.
That sounds perfect for Ursula von der Leyen. I think she'd appreciate that. Jeff Bullwinkel, what do you think?
Echoing what others have said, I'd also say that Europe can be and should be a center of innovation built upon leveraging data effectively in the context of the world of artificial intelligence, where regulation need not be antithetical to innovation.
Perfect. All right. I see a Europe in 2030 that is a data leader, a moral leader, a supercomputing leader, and a green tech leader. I want to thank our panelists. I think if we can get to that Europe, we'll have done our jobs. Thank you so much, everybody, for participating, and thank you guys for watching. Let's give them a round of applause.